We can take our mics off up here now. It's a little reprieve that we're really happy with because we think people can hear us better and know what we say. I'm Liz Hoffman Bauer, and I had an incident about a few months ago that carried over, and I decided Mother's Day was the time to do something about it. Amanda is here, Amanda Napier. Raise your hand, Amanda. She's probably, you just associate her with the nurse's office, and that's where you should. She would come by when we were still in E-Wing and see us each Thursday to take our temperature and oxygen. Sometimes she could stay a little longer and we would talk. And so we got to know each other pretty well. The whole wing did. And then for a while she didn't come, and it was quite a while. And I maybe it wasn't that long, but it seemed that long, Amanda. So I asked the person that came in her place why Amanda wasn't coming anymore, and she said that her mother was dying and she wanted to stay home and be with her. So I waited 2 or 3 weeks after she came back and said to her, "Would you tell me about your mother?" And after she left, I thought of how tender she talked, how loving it was. And she did it so easily. And it got me to thinking about my mother. So this is why we planned this today. Would you want to start, Amanda? I'll talk just a few minutes after you, and then it's yours.
As Liz said, we got to know each other really well. Oh, thank you. I'm used to the mask too. Can you hear now? Okay, everyone? A little closer? How's this? Better? Okay. As Liz said, we got to know each other through checking on her on E-Wing and the rest of the residents, and through the death of my mother, I think she kind of got back to her old counselor days and wanted to try to make me feel better by getting me to talk about my mom and to celebrate her. And it did help me with the healing process, talking about mom and all that she had to offer her fellow humankind, because my mom was kind of a humanitarian and the simplest of senses. She never did anything for reward. It was always just kind of a thing she had with her and the Lord. She just gave what she could. She did what she could to help her fellow human. Just a couple weeks before mom stopped being able to drive because she went blind in one of her eyes, she met a lady who was walking around a parking lot. And it kind of troubled my mom, wondering what this lady was doing in the middle of the parking lot in Marion, Indiana. And she approached her, and they had a few moments of conversation. And through that, she learned that this woman didn't have any food at home to feed her kids till the end of the week when she would get her monthly check. And she was worried about how she was going to get groceries. So my mom followed her in there and got her a grocery cart full of groceries, helped her load them into her car, and then mom took her home and never bragged about it. It wasn't that mom wanted recognition. It was just her doing her part for her fellow mother, her fellow human being, that she didn't need the recognition. She just knew that she was helping. And my mom, her whole life just kind of exemplified that. She was always seeing what she could do for others. She would go without for others. And that was the kind of mother she was. And that's how she raised us to be. We were to give of ourselves, put others first. And so Liz and I put out boxes asking for everyone that had a story about their mom or another mother to put a story in that we could read. And so we did get several letters here. The first one is from Alma Eiler, remembering my mom, Ruby Morningstar. Alma writes, "During the retirement years of my life, I have taken time to think back on the memories of my childhood. I know now that it was my mother's positive words that contributed to a stable emotional life, then and throughout my life. She would say, trust, or have faith, or trust and have faith. The words count your blessings or look on the bright side put me on the path of a positive mindset. Other encouraging words were, it will work out, or it was to be so. Little did I realize as a child how much these words unconsciously influenced my way of living. Mother was a woman who lived her faith in God. She was soft-spoken, thoughtful, loving, helpful, and giving. I am so grateful for my mom. That's beautiful, Alma. Marie Willoughby, she wrote, my mother was a strong person who made it possible for me to experience many interesting and fun things. Her name was Muriel Amelia Freisinger Hoover Saylor. She was a college student at age 17, married at age 20, a mother at 21, and then a widow with 3 very young children at age 25. By strapping 2 wooden crates to a tractor, my mother finished the farm work that my father was no longer around to do. We children rode in the fields with her. Several years later, she married a former college classmate who was very brave to take on this young family as his own. When my brother began first grade, Mother went back to college to earn her teaching degree. For about 10 years, she taught 8th grade one-room country school, then became a 6th grade classroom teacher and elementary school principal. I did my student teaching next door to her classroom in Elizabethtown, Pennsylvania. My mother made sure I had the equipment I needed to do a week-long Appalachian Trail hike and Dan West as a leader in 1953. Other hikes, camps, and various other young youth gatherings were made possible by her willingness to let me participate. She was my instructor when I learned to drive. She was a good one, too. I don't remember finances being discussed at home, but we learned to tithe our small allowances and did daily and weekly chores to earn a bit of money and lots of permissions. One of her sayings was, if someone offers you money, you take it. She accepted gifts of homemade food from students whose homes were not always up to par. Receiving was important to the other's self-esteem. What you did with the gift was another matter. As a mother and as a teacher, my mother expected the best one had to give and made sure you gave it. But she made things interesting and worthwhile. I was never a student in her classroom, but always enjoyed visiting her one-room school when my own school had vacation days. Christmas programs were well done, and much learning took place in the preparation and presentation of them. Always a fast walker, she took after her own mother that way. They both were also involved in many church and community activities and set an example for me and my own children. She had a greeting and a smile for everyone and made people feel seen and appreciated. That's nice, Marie. Esther Hamer, she wrote, my mother was up at 5 a.m. every morning so that she could cook breakfast and pack a new lunch for my dad, who left our home every morning except on Sunday at 6 a.m. to go to work. At age 5, I was always up at that time sitting in my small child's rocking chair in the kitchen, observing what Mother was doing. Mother always had craft projects for her 3 daughters to do. For example, we made our own Valentines. But there was always time in her busy schedule of cooking, cleaning the house, and doing the laundry. And after the laundry dried enough, everything, tablecloths, cloth napkins, bed sheets, pillowcases, dresses, shirts, etc., they were all ironed. Still, she had time for a daily devotional prayer time. In the spring, summer, and autumn, every Sunday morning, she would go out to her flower gardens and pick fresh flowers and make the most beautiful large bouquet of flowers, which she would take to the church and place on the altar for the Sunday morning worship service. She always taught a children's Sunday school class every Sunday, and she served several years as the director of children's work for South Central District of Indiana Church of the Brethren. She's a busy lady, Nestor. Okay. And finally, we have from Yvonne Brand. How does one condense the life of 84 years into a few sentences? My mother, Ruth, was born in 1901 on her parents' ranch on the Kansas prairie near her mother's people. She began her formal education walking to a one-room schoolhouse. Then in 1911, the family moved to a farm in southwest Michigan near her father's people. One time I asked her about her memories of the ranch. She replied, "Wind. There was always a wind a-blowin'." Ruth continued her education by walking to another one-room schoolhouse through the 8th grade. Her high school class of 1920 had 8 girls and 1 boy. They continued to gather periodically for 65 years. Ruth enrolled at Michigan Agricultural College, non-Michigan State University, receiving a degree in teaching home economics. She married that one boy in 1927. She taught by example. She believed in finishing a task. She had a great work ethic. She saw the good in a person. She lived through the Depression learning how to manage money. I remember her many envelopes earmarked for various monthly expenses. She had the foresight to see teaching school requires helping a home. So her mom and dad, my grandparents, came to live with us for the remainder of their lives. What a blessing. Never to be a latchkey kid. Also, because they were there, she was able to pursue a master's degree in adolescent behavior since she was non-teaching 6th graders, retiring in 1964. Lastly, she valued family, friends, and church ahead of her needs. Ruth was rewarded by being able to spend 24 winters in Florida. Her husband called her my Kansas sunflower. In her memory, she had a life well lived. Thank you, Yvonne.
Is that all? Yeah.
That is all of them, yes. Thank you, everyone that shared a story about your mother.
Well,
I know
we're
it's
not
not
gonna let
easy.
him go yet.
No,
You know what'll
but
happen.
to everyone that shared.
Yeah, oh, thank you. But
Yes.
you know what'll happen. Somebody has thought of something they'd like to tell. I can't, you have to be here. I can't see.
Go ahead to the mic here.
Who said they had something they'd like to share? Jeanette's gonna end it with a song, but maybe you have a story to tell.
Do you have a story? Someone in the audience wanted to know about your mother?
I have a host. I plan to talk, so I'll do it.
Sure.
What time is it? Okay. We would meet in the hall and give each other an idea, and we just didn't get anything written out. My mother was here. She died here, probably in B Wing. I think that the best I could find out, that was healthcare at that time. Her name, and get this, Tressie, Tressie. You know the doll, but that's not a name that you really know. Mabel Heater Hoffman was her name. I always thought Grandma had a sense of humor. She mother had 4 brothers, and they had just as interesting a names as she did. Mother was tall, angular, very neat about herself, but she had hair that went down to the bottom of her hem of her skirt. It was never cut until she came to Timbergrass. That was just too much for him to take care of it. It was a braid on one side and a braid on the other, and then it twirled around and like that. And it really did look okay. It really did look. In fact, a lady that you all know if I'd tell her name, it came to Mother one day and said, "Tressie, I'd like to wear my hair like you. Will you show me how? So, anyway, that's the way mother was. She was her own person. I wouldn't say she was a woman's liver because she didn't go out and advertise everything, but she had her own bank account, her own checking account. And she was the first one of her set to wear slacks, to have slacks. How many of you remember no Peru, Indiana, and there was a Singer store there? Well, we went to Singer's and bought the slacks for her. It was a big deal because she had never worn them before, and she wasn't sure she should, but yet she wanted to. Um, she worried about us a lot. I had whooping cough, pretty tough. And every time I'd cough, it would worry her. And sometimes in the morning when I'd wake up, there'd be a cloth with some eucalyptus oil, eucalyptus oil on, which said stop the coughing and uh, allowed me to sleep. She worried. My sister was a victim of multiple sclerosis, and mother's own dad had something that they didn't know what it was, and they called it. Well, I don't know. It went with nerves anyway, and so it worried her, and so she watched. And anytime we would stumble or anything like that, she worried. I was growing pretty fast, and that bothered her, and she knew that my legs ached, and so I'd catch her in the middle of the night sometimes, up rubbing my legs so that I could sleep. One time, they expected us to do discipline. And one time I wasn't listening. I don't know what she wanted me to do, but I wasn't listening. And all at once I heard her call from the other side of the kitchen, Elizabeth, if you don't, whatever it was, I'm going to wash your face with the dishcloth. And of course, I giggled at her, but I didn't go to her right away. The next thing I knew, she was in the dishwater, wringing out that dishcloth and started after me. Well, of course, I was giggling all the way and ran out the door and down the steps, and she ran right after me, giggling just like that, too. And we lived on a farm, and we went when I finally went far enough to go past the barn and be at the crossroads. We both retired and we bent over and just giggled and giggled. And I'm sure I went in and did what she wanted me to do. We were expected to behave. And we were told, you know, your dad is a minister. He also was the principal of the high school. So we didn't have many places to be naughty. And that was our life. She was loving, not gushy. That's all right too. But she was not. She was very prim and proper about things. And that was my mom, Tressie Mabel. Yeah, and she died. I think she was in her 80s here in at Timbercrest here. And I thought I ought to come too. Does anybody else have another story they want to tell? We're hoping to say something to Brian that we might put these up. Would anyone mind that if we found a place to put them someplace? I don't know that he can give us that permission, but we would like that. Okay. Let's do that.
I didn't think about writing it down. But the things I remember about my mother was that when things got hard, when she had a hard time, she stuck to it. She didn't give up. She even lost one of her legs when she was alive. And she just lived with it. She just accepted that. She was one of 4 pupils in her high school class. She was the only girl. So she had it pretty nice, I thought. Uh, she she liked flowers. She always had big beds of flowers that every summer, and we had big yards, and so she could put the flowers around the edge of the yard. Um, she she also enjoyed doing things at the church. She was often making the communion bread, and sometimes I would sneak along with her and grab a scrap, you know. But the funny thing about her was that she said she didn't want to come to Timbercrest because it was backed by the church and they'd expect her to work. So she went to Peabody, and she lived to be she lacked a month of being 99. And so I always thought my mother was pretty special.
Thank you, Lois. Are there others?
That's a great story.
I can't tell what time it is. Does somebody know?
4:25.
Well, we'd have time for 1 or 2, and then the singing that Jeanette wanted to do. Unless Jeanette has a story too. I do it. Good.
I'm not trying to. A little strange that I offered to do this. My mother taught my sister and me to sing. My mother taught my sister and me to sing duets when we were 5 and 7 years old. And so all of our time together at home before, we sang all over. There were one-room schools and agro farm things in our little community, so we did a lot of singing. And so a song that came to my mind this Mother's Day was the one that Mother taught us. And I made copies of it, and what I'm going to do is read it to you, just the words, and then I'll take the copies back, and if anybody wants a copy of the words, you may have them. Each year should be every year. Well, let me start again. Each year in the month of May, to a custom we adhere, it's Mother's Day. We pause each year in respect for her so dear. As the next day dawns, we feel our duties done. But the next day more, let us carry on every daughter, every son. Mother's Day should be every day, not just one Sunday in May. In one lone day, can we ever, even though we pray, can we ever hope to pay for the love that she gives as long as she lives, even sometimes with a tear? So Mother's Day should be every day, not just one Sunday in May. And I did have copies made, but I didn't leave them back there, so I'll just carry them to the back now. And if anyone wants to pick up, I think that's a nice thought.
Could you sing it for us?
I don't know that I could. Every day should be Mother's Day, not just one Sunday in May. Yeah, but I'm singing the wrong song. Each year in the month of May, to our custom we adhere. It's Mother's Day. We pause each year in respect for her so dear. As the next day comes and passes on, we feel our duties done. But the next day born, let us carry on every daughter, every son. Mother's Day should be every day, not just one Sunday in May. in one lone day. Even though we pray, can we ever hope to pay for the love she gives as long as she lives, even sometimes with a tear? So Mother's Day should be every day, not just one Sunday in May.
It's right at 4:30. 2 minutes still.
Thank you for coming. Was it a nice Mother's Day for you? They said that they had a beautiful thing in our courtyard. So I'm trying to. Oh, Sam's next. Sam, our one of our maintenance people, and you probably all call him in to hang pictures and such because he's good at it. But Sam will be here with his daughter next week, and they're going to do gospel music. And then the very last one is Al Hole, and it's Memorial Day, and he's going to have something to go with Memorial Day. Thanks for coming. Yes. She caused it all.
The story about your mom was lovely.
What?
The story about your mom was